Recording. All right. So good morning, good evening, good afternoon, depending on where you are. Welcome to the ISSIP NSF workshop on future of work and learning. This is the third in the series of 4 on industry best practices for skills screening. And let me actually share my screen. That would help. Can you see my screen?
Yes, we can see it.
Okay, excellent. So welcome everyone. I really appreciate for all of you to be here. As I said, this is the third in a series of 4 workshops. Many of you have attended the previous 2. So some of the things that I especially go through might be redundant. So I apologize for those who have been here. This is for the benefit of those who are new to this session. And then we'll have another session next week on a slightly different topic on innovations in credentialing and industry-academia collaboration. So these series are really intended to foster dialogue between industry and academia in order to develop collaborative approaches that can close the gap between undergraduate education and employment, STEM employment. So a few recognitions. First and foremost, I would like to thank our sponsor, the National Science Foundation. We are really honored to be supported for this work and really appreciate NSF's support on this and several others projects that we have done through NSF sponsorship. Also, I'd like to recognize Cisco Systems for making it possible for us to use WebEx, and also UC Santa Cruz, Silicon Valley, for giving me a house here to make sure that I'm in a facility that has a solid internet connection and a very nice conference room. Also, I'd like to recognize our project team, Dr. Haluk Demirkan, Dr. Lou Front, Dr. Martha Russell, and Dr. Joe Yuan for their ongoing hard work for the last several months to make this possible. And I also would like to thank our programming committee members and workshop chairs who behind the scene really made this happen with all their support of inviting folks and their own participation and their own thought leadership. I won't go through the whole names, but names that you see here are all part of ISSIP leadership team. And so thank you all so much for your contributions. I also would like to thank our speakers, Joe Barcy from California Giant Farms, Carrie Brenner from National Academies, who is moderating this, this panel, Patrick Kane from Infineon, Renee Patton from Cisco, Nancy Rush from SAS. Renee is also chair of the Linux Foundation, AI and Data. And last but not least, Amit Srivastava from Tata Consulting Services. Really delighted to have you here, and thank you for your time. And I also would like to thank all of you, all the participants. You know, I know there are hundreds of other things that you can allocate your time to, and we really appreciate for you to making the time here today. So we have a packed agenda. we'll have a quick opening between Terry Griffith, ISSIP incoming president and chair of innovation and entrepreneurship at Simon Fraser University. And I'll go through some context of this project that we're doing. Then we'll go into the panel. Around 10:50, we'll go into a break, come back for a short review of a survey that we have been running along with this workshop, and we'll share some of the results on industry's perspective on improvements of undergraduate education, what they view that could be improvements on undergraduate education. We get into a 30-minute breakout session and then regroup and wrap up. So with that, I will turn it over to Terry to say a few words about ISSIP. Thank you so much, Terry.
Well, thank you so much, Yasi. I'm so appreciative to see so many people that support ISSIP in many ways, and then new people. And ISSIP has over 1,400 members. And these folks come from over 200 universities, over 50 different companies, and over 42 different countries. And we come together in the study of service and service innovation for opportunities like this one. But some of the things you may not understand is we also offer opportunities for publications, research that you may have done, research that you might be interested in doing, both electronic and hard copy publications. And my favorite aspect of these are the industry academic partnerships. And certainly these workshops are examples of that, but I have benefited greatly by the ability to bring the ideas from our corporate members into my classroom. I hope some of the ideas that I share in my position as Keith Beattie Chair of Innovation and Entrepreneurship get out into a broader audience from our ISSIP membership. And I'm always looking forward to our membership bringing in others that they discover have interests in the kinds of topics that we cover, especially if they're looking to partner with other people. So we have small partnerships, large partnerships, and the idea that we can come together and study things that are important and do it quickly and get the ideas back out into the community is one of the things that leads me to be so excited about ISSIP. So I look forward to the rest of the session, and I look forward to meeting anyone that you might bring into the community. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Terry. So I'll give you a quick context about the project that we're doing with the support of NSF. So we actually started this work about a couple of years ago with another award that we were granted through NSF, and to really in this space of closing the gap between education and STEM employment. So in 2019, we were granted an award to study and gain an industry perspective on STEM education for the future. And that program lasted for about a couple of years. And it culminated into a published paper through Springer, and as a proposed roadmap to close the gap between undergraduate education and STEM employment across industry sectors. And you can see the information about the published paper. Okay. And what it really culminated into is this framework that we composed as a result of our findings from industry and as a result of the dialogue between industry and academia. And this was published early this year. And you can see some of the, so basically there were two categories of skills that we all hear about, technical and specialized skills and foundational skills. And in our categorization, actually, we said there is a third category, which is work practice skills. So it's not just technical skills and soft skills, but work practice skills, which has to do with service thinking, has to do with design thinking, project management, business savvy. We also came up with, there's a baseline digital skills that everybody should have. And then, it had the soft skills also, and then the technical skills. Then we said, skills are necessary, but not sufficient. We need, in the future, our younger generation need a different mindset. They need a growth mindset. They need to be thinking in probabilities and also in systems and services and design thinking and having a value co-creation mindset. And of course, then we said, all of this without having everyone an opportunity to really play in the tremendous opportunities of STEM employment in the future. We wouldn't have succeeded if we don't consider that inclusiveness. So this was work that was done in 2020 and then published in 2021. And then after that, we proposed another award that really digged deeper into the work that we had already done. And these questions really emerged during our previous work. So, and these were, how has industry perspectives on skills have changed as a result of COVID? How are industry recruiters and hiring managers screening STEM graduates? And from industry's perspective, which colleges, universities better align with industry demand? And then how are industry recruiters using badging and certification to assess job readiness for college graduates? And the focus of this workshop today is this number 3. The first 2 workshops were focused on the first 2 questions, and today we are focusing on this question. So we actually went through and are actually conducting a survey to update what we had done a couple of years ago. And what you see in red is what we have learned during the current survey. And it is very much in line with what we came out with a couple of years ago. We said technical and specialized skills keep changing because technology keeps changing. But foundational skills, they don't change as much. And enabling students on the foundational skills is something that our education system needs to consider. So the goal of this workshop is gaining insight into what industry experts consider to be best practices for teaching and learning pedagogies that prepare undergraduates for new and future STEM jobs. And I couldn't have wished for a better panel to share their experience and knowledge in this area. So without further ado, I'll turn it over to Carrie, who's Dr. Carrie Brenner, who is moderating this session. Carrie is from the National Academy of Sciences, and Carrie, without further ado, I'll turn it over to you.
Great. Thank you so much, Yassi. I'm happy to be here with you all today. I wanted to just tell you a brief bit about myself and what we do at the National Academies. So I'm a senior program officer in the Board on Science Education, and we look at K-12 education, undergraduate and higher education, and informal education like museums and things like that, after school programs. And for the most part, our biggest projects are consensus studies where we review the evidence in the literature, and a committee analyzes all that information and makes recommendations for policy and practice. I lead our roundtable on systemic change in undergraduate STEM education, and that's a group that brings together people from across different disciplines of STEM, different types of colleges and universities, and also from government, from industry, and from associations, like the Association of Public and Land Grant Universities, for example. And we try to look at what are the big system level issues that need attention in undergraduate education, where a national voice and a national conversation can help advance the wonderful work that's happening in kind of discrete local areas. So we try to think about where there's a big picture issue where a whole group thinking about it together will help improve things. And so we also, that project is funded by the National Science Foundation, like this one. They also funded us recently to hold a symposium on imagining the future of undergraduate STEM education, where we're trying that. So that one is the one that's most closely parallel this project. So we're trying to imagine what kind of structures and approaches in 2040, how would the undergraduates be learning? How can we best promote student success for those students of the future, and thinking about the changes in technology that you all know about, but also kind of the changes in the student population. So today I'm going to kind of lead this wonderful group in a discussion. So we're going to have 5 to 7 minutes from each of the panelists who are listed on our agenda here. And then I'll ask them some questions, and we hope the rest of you will have some questions for them as well. You can put them in the chat as they occur to you, or I don't know about how raising hands works in WebEx, but I think there's a way to do that. So feel free to raise your hand to ask a question too once we get past all of the presentations. Right, so I think if everyone could introduce yourself as each of the panelists as you're presenting, and give a little bit of information about what your company is and what your role is and how you work with undergraduates, both you and your company. We're especially interested in your examples of programs that have really good teaching and learning approaches, good pedagogies that really focus on student success and helping them to learn what industry is like, what skills they're going to need for their jobs. So you can share some of the things that cover the topics Yassi listed from, numbers 1 to 6, but if you could focus on number 3 that she pointed out there, about the alignment between curriculum and pedagogies with what you're looking for in industry, that would be most appreciated. And Yassi, you were going to help with sharing the slides, or were they going to do it themselves? You're muted, so we can't.
Sorry, I'm happy to share the slides. It just depends on some people prefer to drive their own slides.
All right, so if you want, it's your turn, just ask if you want Yassi to help with that. And we'll just go in the order that's listed on the agenda there. So Joe Barcy from California Giant Berry Farms, you're up first. Thank you.
Okay, hold on 1 second here.
Here, I'll stop sharing.
Good morning. I think, Yassi, I think you're gonna have to share for me. I apologize.
No problem. Let me
We're a
just.
Microsoft Teams environment, and I'm on my Mac today, and so they're asking me
And
for
I'll
some sort of.
jump in if people go past their 7 minutes, so don't be
Got it.
offended. Just, try to keep it at
Well,
time.
yeah. Well, while she's pulling that up, thank you. Thanks for having me on here this morning. I'm Joe Barcy, the president of California Giant Berry Farms. We are a family-owned company, been in business for 40 years. We grow, pack, and ship fresh blueberries, strawberries, raspberries, and blackberries across the world. We are one of the largest suppliers of fresh berries in the U.S. market today. We are based in Watsonville, California. I grew up in Watsonville, California. It's located on the Monterey Bay, just between Santa Cruz and Monterey. So Yasi, I'm not too far from you this morning. It's an optimum place to grow berries. Of course, California grows 85% of North America's strawberries, so that's why we're based here. But we do source berries from all over the world for the different markets. I pursued, I guess the next slide, and basically the title of my presentation, of course, thanks Yasi for pulling that up, is Farming for the Future, which is one of our strategic pillars as a company. So yeah, I got my degree. I pursued a degree in agricultural business from California Polytechnic State University, San Luis Obispo, with a concentration in marketing. I did not grow up. I grew up in a kind of an ag community. Grew up in the country. However, my dad was in retail. He was not in ag, but I had a lot of family friends that were in agricultural and various facets of the business, whether they grew berries or they were in the frozen fruit or frozen vegetable processing business or cattle ranchers, that type of thing. So their families tended to make a good living, and nice living, and looked like their lives were pretty good. So I ventured into to agriculture. Of course, I basically kind of learned about the produce industry from growing up, of course. But then I had an internship myself with a produce company in Santa Maria, California, where I learned kind of all about the fresh produce business. Um, Subsequently, of course, I went back and got my MBA. That's where I know Dr. Griffith from Santa Clara University. Um, but yeah, and so that's where I probably was the only, I think Dr. Griffith could attest, but I think I was probably the only non engineering or non-tech person in the room during our time there at Santa Clara University. Um, and then I guess the next slide, if you want to, sorry about that, but I kind of gave our history already. Education, go to the next one, I believe. Um, no, I think further down. Anyhow, so I wanted to kind of cite a few examples of how basically STEM kind of relates to our business and what we're doing in our business. There's a couple different things involved in California Giant. We own a strawberry nursery. If you could go to the next slide, Yasi, I think. Well, let's go back. We have a partnership with a company called 1.1, based in Silicon Valley. There's a couple students that were Santa Clara University students. They were robotics students, but we have a partnership that we've kind of ventured into with them on indoor aeroponic growing of crops. They're already doing leafy greens. We have a venture with them to grow strawberries indoors with them. So if you can go to the next slide, Yasi, and maybe just keep scrolling, please, because I'm going to run out of time. But yeah, and so their venture, of course, was in leafy greens, but it relates to kind of what they've done, transition from being not a traditional ag type Bachelor of Science in Agriculture student to robotics type play in agriculture. And if you want to slide to the next slide, I don't have an animation, but basically what they're doing is they're going to their long-term end game is obviously aeroponic growing, vertical grow of crops, but then also to machine harvest that through robotics. And so haven't got there yet, but they're working hard on it. But just to relate to the STEM part of their backgrounds as it relates to kind of how they did the startup business, and we are working with them today. I think the next one, if you can continue to slide forward. Yeah, so Crown Nursery is a company that we own as a company. Basically, they developed strawberry plants, through kind of a meristemming. So the way they grow strawberry plants is they propagate them. So there's a mother plant and a daughter plant, and then they'll cut that daughter plant. And if you could go to the next slide to kind of show you one of the employees of Crown Nursery. Basically, they remove the apical meristem. No, maybe that's not the most recent one, but either way, sorry about that. I don't think it's the latest presentation, but so what they do is there's a certain steps involved in basically propagating a nursery plant. So I thought it was applicable to kind of, for students to understand, like, what we do from a propagation of a nursery plant stock. So there's a mother plant, there's an apical meristem where they'll get under a microscope and they'll have to actually, cut off an apical meristem and put it in a grow medium to grow that plant out. It takes about a year process to do that. We call that a clean stock program, and it's certified by the California Department of Food and Agriculture. But it's a pretty fascinating, way of showing how, science-based education. There's definitely opportunity for students to be involved if they want to work in a lab to venture into that type of opportunity with someone like Crown Nursery. We also currently are utilizing basically interns currently to track our test plots as a company. So we test couple hundred different varieties of strawberries a year in a test plot next to our fields that we're growing fresh production. And we're capturing all that data using interns to basically capture that data into kind of a platform that we've built to track, yields and temperature and, flavor, bricks, all those type of things. And those are uploaded to, obviously our platform, our data storage the system that we use to be able to track. Prior to that, a couple of years ago, it was mainly anecdotal. So we weren't utilizing intern, or we weren't utilizing employees. It was more of somebody like a grower just providing anecdotal data on a certain variety of a berry. But now we're becoming more evidence-based and utilizing interns to do that. So we're looking for obviously students that have, some sort of, capability as it relates to technology, which most of them do this day and age, as well as some critical thinking skills, and not just looking at the data or looking at what they're entering, but just to kind of take a step back and be able to have some critical thinking about what they're looking at. You can go to the next slide.
Thank you so much, Joe. If you could
Yes.
wrap up, and then we'll come back and talk more about internships after we've heard about the different kinds of internships that the other panelists will mention.
Beautiful. Well, thank you very much. And I think that kind of wraps it up. I think you summed it up right there, Dr. Brenner. We're internships at Cal Giant. So thank you.
All right, that sounds great. Okay, so thanks for sharing all that information. So we'll move over to Patrick now. Take it away.
Hey, Yassi, as long as you are sharing, you can just go into my slide deck if you have it. Otherwise, I can.
Hold on a second. Let me.
Sure.
Somehow my screen is stuck. I think I need to probably stop sharing.
I can share.
Yeah, go ahead, Patrick,
All right,
because I
I'll do
can't.
that.
For some reason, my.
Okay, that's all right. Good to go, I think.
Stuck.
All right. So first of all, thank you very much. I'm very privileged to be invited to sit on this panel. I want to talk not only about the overview topic, but specifically with Infineon. I'm the director of the University Alliances. As I say, I misspelled Infineon. Infineon was acquired, or Cypress was acquired by Infineon April 2020. And so now I can say that just as a brief bio, I have spent over 30 years in the semiconductor industry, starting at Advanced Micro Devices, then Lattice, Xilinx, Cypress, and now Infineon. And I've spent going on 20 years managing University Alliance programs for Xilinx, Cypress, Infineon. And these programs are not part of HR. I'm not a recruiter per se, although I cooperate with HR during career fair season. But what I'm doing is I'm really educating future customers and employees, because I go in and do in-person workshops. I'll be at Milwaukee School of Engineering on Monday, at Purdue, Georgia Tech, and ASU since September. Those were my first live workshops since January 2020. But consequently, I have spent a lot of time creating and presenting hands-on workshops to upskill students in various technologies, depending on who I was working for. FPGAs, programmable system on chip, now IoT, AI, and machine learning. And I am a strong advocate of lifelong learning. Surprising to me, I realized a couple of years ago that I've actually been in a formal, starting with kindergarten, I've actually been in a formal academic setting, meaning earning some kind of degree every decade of my life. So never expected that at this point. But anyhow, I put my money where my mouth is in that area. So there, okay. So Infineon, any high-tech company, and as we've learned, even strawberry companies need new college graduates that can hit the ground running, meaning they have to be lifelong learners, and they also need to graduate having learned the fundamental one, and teach them how to use an oscilloscope or something like that. So, we have specific schools we recruit from. And that is, of course, resource limited. We can't recruit from every school we would like to. And we also fund research at universities. So from one spectrum to the other, but my role is kind of in the middle. I'm open to all universities in terms of any university can join the Infineon University Alliance. And as I said, educating future customers means we want new college grads, not only that we can hire, but also that our customers can hire and that are conversant with, the latest technologies. Some of the ways we do this is specifically hackathons, makeathons, and on-campus makerspaces, supplying kits to that, sponsoring them, mentoring them during the actual hackathon or makeathon. One that you may have heard of, because it's been going on for 20 years, is the Solar Decathlon, which is creating energy efficient and smart housing. They used to, back in the day, build their houses on campus and then tear them down and ship them off to Washington and rebuild them on the National Mall, where there'd be an event usually in April. But this is going to be virtual this year, but we are a big sponsor of that. And that was in the US, but now this year, I've been away from it for a couple of years, but this year, it looks like there's not just universities in the US, there's across Europe. But anyhow, check out the website if you're interested. And then there's another program, Microelectronics Training Industry and Skills, or METIS, which is a EU initiative. And I noticed that you had in your one of the slides, I saw that there is EU involvement in ISSIP. So this is an EU initiative to create courseware to bridge the skills gap in the microelectronics sector. So this is not just for students, but it might be for people who have to learn new skills due to automation or something like that. I was talking to one of our people running this in Munich last week, and she told me we have a new fab. Actually, she's in Austria. We had a new fab that just opened in Villach, Austria, and she said there's one building, the actual fab building there's not one person in there, maybe a guard at the front door, I don't know. But all the supporting engineers are in the buildings around it, and everything is being run, via the internet or whatever. And the only time they actually need to go in there is when they need to do maintenance on the equipment or something like that. So that's kind of interesting. So anyhow, typically a fab like that would employ quite a few people on the line, but when it's automated, obviously some people are going to have to change careers, at least slightly, even staying with the company. So that's just kind of an example of a university that we really love, or I do, is Cal Poly, SLO. I've been on the advisory board there for 10 years, and we've gotten lots of good candidates from there. And MIT is another one, learned by doing, because I would say the professors at both these schools are more facilitators than they are, lecturers or the traditional educator, because they kind of give the students the access to the information, and they're expected to take their time to learn it, and then they come with questions, of course. And that reminds me of something else on one of the slides I saw that on the survey, I guess, was managing across cultures. And I would argue that not only do you need to learn how to manage across cultures, but you need to learn how to manage across generations, because the students in school today, most of them, undergrad, most of them were not alive when 9/11 happened. So certainly for all of us, that's probably something we remember, but they have no memory of some of those events. And of course, they are the true digital natives that people have been talking about. Lastly, I want to just talk about sponsorship of academic organizations that focus on improving outcomes for students in STEM. Two of them that we support is ISSIP, the Electrical and Computer Engineering Department Heads Association. So that is mostly in, well, both of these are mostly in the United States. We also support some outside, but I didn't think to put those down. Anyhow, these are the department heads from over 300 universities, mostly in the US, a few in Mexico and Canada. And the Inclusive Engineering Consortium, which is industry and historically Black colleges and universities and other minority supported institutions. We are a corporate sponsor and on the corporate advisory board of that. And that was, there will be a conference called Equitech, a virtual in January. So if anyone's, I'm sure it's free. So if anyone's interested, shoot me an email and I'll be happy to, or you can go to iec.org to register, of course. So that's about what I had to say by way of introduction. I'm interested in hearing the other panelists and also answering any questions you might have.
Great, thank you so much, Patrick. We're going to go to Renee now. Are you ready?
Great. Thank you, Carrie. And thank you, Yasi. It's a pleasure to be here this morning. I have just a couple of slides. Actually, Yasi, if you wouldn't mind pulling those up for me, I'd appreciate it. And so as Yasi does that, just a little bit of background. So I was born and raised in Los Gatos, California, and also went to Santa Clara University, received my undergraduate degree in English with a minor in French. Ended up going to Stanford to get my master's degree in education, and was a high school teacher at St. Francis High School in Mountain View, and also was on the local school board for the Los Gatos Saratoga Joint Unified High School District. So I'm now living in Santa Cruz, so I'm right in between Joe and Yasi. So we moved here about 2 years ago. And back in 1995, I ended up taking a hard left turn, and I moved from education into technology. So I went to work for Siemens, then worked for a couple of startup companies, and then started my own consulting business and went to work for Cisco. And at the time, Cisco hired me to manage the E-rate program, which many of you are probably familiar with. So I managed that as a consultant. And I said, well, this is great. I have a lot of education experience, so this is perfect because I can connect education with technology. And they said, well, we really care more about your ability to manage large, complex programs than about your education experience. So coincidentally, they needed someone to run education field marketing. So I kind of did both. And I've fast forward been at Cisco for 17 years. And I've been focused on our education business the whole entire time. About a week before COVID hit, I was asked to take on our healthcare practice. And then about 2 months ago, I was asked to take on retail and financial services. So I work within the industry solutions group at Cisco, where we're responsible for deeply understanding our customers' imperatives, their care abouts, what they're trying to do within those industries, and then mapping technology to help them with their digital transformation. So just a little bit about Cisco. So we're actually, we were founded on the Stanford campus over 30 years ago, when two networking professionals were trying to figure out how to get their computers to talk with one another from two different locations on campus. And that was the birth of the multi-protocol services router many, many years ago. So we started building and shipping product. We became the world's most valuable company at that time. And we quickly realized that we needed people who could service, install, manage all of this networking equipment that we were putting in place. So we created, as a result of that, the Cisco Networking Academy program. And so the NetAcad program was something that we developed where we give, and many of you have NetAcads on your campus. You're very familiar with the Networking Academy program. And so it's our largest philanthropic program today. We donate all of the content and curriculum for the courses. So basic skills in IT, cybersecurity, the Internet of Things. And then our campus is set up literally labs within on the campus environment. And we work with the Networking Academy faculty members, teachers to deliver skills in IT. Those students can go on to get jobs at Cisco, they get jobs with our partners, and certainly they get jobs with our customers because there's still a huge demand for, of course, networking equipment. So another fun fact about Cisco, it actually stands for San Francisco, and our logo is the Golden Gate Bridge. So we, are really focused on building the bridge to the future. We talk a lot about the bridge to possible. And I think as a result of COVID, we've really been trying to do everything that we can to ensure an inclusive recovery for all. So that includes inclusive learning, inclusive care. So those are all components of what we do. I think one of the things that is interesting as we think about the future is security happens to be our largest business. So as we think about basic skills in IT, security is absolutely one of those. And Yessi, I don't know if you were able to share my slide. I had kind of a second slide where I wanted to talk a little bit about the landscape and what we're seeing in the future. Let me see if I can do that from here. Okay, let me just quickly try to bring this up. Okay, there we go. By the way, we also deliver WebEx. So WebEx is actually a Cisco product for those of you who may not have been aware. So we just went through a software update. So we're always the guinea pigs at Cisco. We're the first ones to try the new equipment, new products, new software solutions. So as I mentioned, I think the interesting thing about COVID, and we were lucky as we headed into the pandemic because we already had a practice in healthcare, we had a practice in education. And what happened overnight is, we had to get 1.2 billion students online. And so the pandemic hit in China, and then of course it rippled to Italy. So we worked very closely with our Italian team, with the Italian government, with IBM and Apple to help to get students up online overnight, literally overnight. And so that was really kind of the beginning of the pandemic for us. Of course, we were working very closely with hospitals and providers to set up temporary field hospitals, make sure they had all the communication and collaboration technology available to them to be able to care for patients. So these were all things that resulted from the pandemic. What we're seeing now is that 100 million workers may need to switch occupations by 2030. 43% of workforces businesses will reduce their workforce. We have 15% of workers in customer interaction fields that need to reskill, a lot of increases in poverty, and 1 in 4 women are considering leaving the workforce. I think one of the things that's most interesting as we head into the panel is that we've seen 114% increase in Cisco Networking Academy growth. And so I think this topic has never been more relevant than it is today. And again, just very happy to be here with all of you and looking forward to the discussion. So Carrie, back to you.
Thank you so much, Renee. That was great. So now we'll move on to Nancy. Let's see, there you are. Okay.
Hi, everyone, and thank you for inviting me to this workshop. I feel honored to be here, a part of. Can you see my screen? There you go. You see it now? Okay, great. So just a brief, who am I? I am an R&D manager in software development, and I have been for my entire career, 30 some years and going on. I also serve as the chairperson of the Linux Foundation AI and Data Technology Advisory Council, and that is a position that our company sponsors, but it is a voted in position, and that gives me an opportunity to explore open source projects and research them as a part of the Linux Foundation. Is my role as a software manager. I manage a team that is diverse across the world of developers, testers, very talented folks, analytical practitioners, and data scientists. Our company, SAS, is an analytical company. We develop analytical software. We are pretty heavily involved in most of the Fortune 500 companies. And we do quite a bit of work with the federal government, but our motto is essentially the power to know. Our goal is to take whatever data that you have and to help you understand what is in that data, make sense of it, and be able to make good decisions from it. And we provide software and tooling and consulting services to help you do that with your data. It's an exciting area to be in. It's constantly changing and moving. And with the development of some of the richer data science practitioner roles, it's really a good place to be positioned for as we move into the future, the 2030s, the 2040s, because data and analytics are what will help enable us to solve significant problems in our world and basically help people improve their lives. That's our goal. I am a lifelong learning advocate too. I'm always looking for the next degree to acquire or certification. I have a number of those. Very strong advocate of the educational system. And I do believe that lifelong learning is something that keeps the work and our jobs fresh. So one of the topics that they suggested we talk about was what best practices have we experienced in our roles in our company. And I've hired many students. I'm in R&D, so I'm not a recruiter, but I do get the opportunity to interface with recruiters. And also I serve as a project mentor for several universities in our area. And so I've had an opportunity to work with students and with their professors. And I came up with sort of 4 areas that I think I have experienced in my role in hiring students coming out of university that I think really work well for preparing students for their roles in industry and then keeping them happy and productive throughout their career. One is one that I work with at NC State, and that is to develop an industry academia senior project. I cannot say enough good things about this. We get, from an industry standpoint, we get sort of free research, basic research that we don't always get time to do. But the students gain so much from this opportunity as well because they get to work on a real world project with industry mentors. And so we're helping them understand, yeah, you thought you could do all those 1,000 things, but you really can do 10. And that's so helpful for them because that's the real world. The second one I just want to touch on is the importance of being able to sell your ideas. I've had students come out who are great at being able to talk, providing information in a clear and concise way. And I've had students have had virtually no training in this. And so they are starting at square zero. So I think it's really important to help students be prepared for industry, especially in the R&D industry. We collaborate a lot. And so being able to go into a group of people and share your ideas clearly and get your point across is really important. And I just want to mention that being able to ethically handle data is also something that students really need to learn how to do, because at least in our space, sometimes we work with data that's sensitive. And so it really helps us if they know how to at least think about ethics when they're working with it. My third one was something that I think if students learn this early, it will help them throughout their career, and that's just know how to sell yourself, know how to present yourself well, have an honest and positive social media presence. I work with one university that does mock interviews. I've had so many students ask questions that they could never ask anybody until they had these mock interviews. And that has set them on a path that has given them career options that they might not have ever had if they hadn't participated in those mock interviews. I'm happy to do them, and most of my colleagues are willing to do that too. So if you can set up a program like that, it's been very helpful. And then the final one, and I think this one's also very important particularly for protected groups or underrepresented groups, is to help people develop some of those soft skills. I do think students will avoid this if they can. So I would suggest these kinds of skills not be ignored in favor of other skills. And so I think you almost need to make them required. So students participate in learning some of these soft skills because it will help them when they get into industry and they do have to get on that team or participate in that study, or someone tells them, challenges their ideas and says, we can't do that. And they're able to handle themselves well and collaborate effectively, positively as they move into their careers. And that's all of my talk. And thank you all for listening.
Thank you so much, Nancy. That was great. So we have one more speaker, and then we'll go into some discussions and questions. So please put your thoughts into the chat on questions we should discuss. But before we get to that, Amit, you are the final speaker. Welcome.
Yeah, thanks, Kerry. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone. Let me just share my screen. I hope it's visible for everyone. Awesome. Yeah. So first of all, thanks for having me here. I feel privileged to be presenting to this forum. Thank you so much. Quick introduction about me. Amit Srivastava. I lead the strategy and market development at TCS. I'm based in Fremont, California, so not very far from some of you. But before I tell about myself more, for those who don't know TCS is Tata Consultancy Services. That is one of the largest and most valuable IT services and consulting firms globally. And the fun part about it is we have a workforce of over 500,000 employees spread across the globe. So we are one of the largest potentially employers as well on the globe. And TCS is part of a larger group company, Tata, which makes everything from salt to steel to software, and Jaguar Land Rover is part of it. So just so that you're able to associate some brand which you might have touched and felt over the years about what Tata from the Tata Group companies. More about TCS itself. So we have been in business for over 50 years, and we continue to be one of the top recruiters of IT services globally, but also in North America. And over the years, we have obviously received multiple accolades and awards based on how we have been interacting with academia, with and bringing academia closer to the industry. I would say that there are three main ways that we are interacting today. One obviously is hiring. Second is we are funding a number of researchers, given all the work that is happening around AI, data, robotics, analytics. So we are doing a lot of funding and research around that, both in US as well as abroad. And the third is it started more of as a CSR kind of an activity, but we are doing a lot on that. Is how do we enable the future students and future leaders to understand more STEM? So we are starting not at an undergrad level, but even before at a K-12 stage. So we have a lot of initiatives there, and I'll touch upon one of those initiatives during the course of my presentation today. More about myself, I've been in TCS for over 2 decades. Worked across 3 continents and had the great opportunity to work across multiple roles and functions over the years. I've led large teams, and I have never been in HR functions as such, or even directly as part of the academic interface, but I have always had an opportunity to interact and work closely with the HR and those functions. And I've been involved very closely with hiring as well as working with several campus hires directly over the years as part of my teams as well as some of the other initiatives. So I have some of my, whatever I'm going to present, some of those thoughts are around what from the company, but a lot of it is also my personal opinion. So yeah, this is what I felt are some of the top 4 engagement tenets with undergrad. How do we make sure that we are successful, the organization is successful, as well as the people that we are hiring are successful. One of the most important aspects is to partner with the right academic institution. Given the business we are in at TCS, the bulk of our hiring is for software developers, computer science grads. So we are looking at evaluating and prioritizing schools all the time that offer these specializations aligning with our needs. And we have been working with a number of schools here in North America, both UC Berkeley, Carnegie Mellon, Purdue, Vanderbilt, Columbia, just to name some of those. And all of these are primarily for hiring from those universities. We also have some of the research that we are doing along with some of these universities. For example, with Carnegie Mellon and others, we have some research that we jointly do with them. The second bit which is more of my personal philosophy for undergrad, is any hiring is not really about the skills, not only about the skills that the person brings, but also the attitude. Given the day and age that we're living in, learning never really stops. I heard Nancy and a bunch of other co-chairs talk about it today, which is, and I am a true believer of that as well. So how does the person that we are hiring, is he or she a believer of lifelong learning? How effective communicators and are they? And I will talk about some of that in one of the future slides as well, on what we are doing to enable some of that. And the third and fourth points on this slide are really more about how we have curated the post-hiring experiences. The initial learning program is super critical since it sets the stage for getting the students a more immersive experience about the company, about the culture of the organization. And I will touch upon it briefly. And the last bit is really while after the initial induction or the learning is complete, how do we create an ecosystem for people to succeed? And I will touch upon that also in one of the next slides. This one, as I said, we have a very, very people-heavy business model. So training at all levels within the organization plays a very key role. But one of the most critical aspects is at the entry level, when people just join in, and we call this ILP, or the Initial Learning Program. Typically, the 10 to 12-week program, all the new hires within North America, we get them into a campus in Cincinnati. So it is a physical, it is more virtual now, but typically it has been a more physical. People go interact with each other. And once they complete this course, then they head off to the specific work locations, whichever part of US they are supposed to be working on. And it is the same model that we have been using in different parts of the world. India, LATAM, Europe, everywhere, and we have had great success with that. And since I started in teaching as a fresh grad. We used to have an ILP back then, but the way it looks now, it is much evolved, much better, much different compared to what we had earlier. Given the change in the kind of technologies that we are working with. So here, if you see, we have the foundational bit and an advanced bit. The foundational bit is more. It covers about the company soft skills and basic technical skills. But after this, the advanced curriculum is more aligned to the kind of projects, kind of industries that they will end up working in. They work much more closely with the BUs while they interact with the talent acquisition team and stuff. But they work much more closely with the BUs to ensure that they're getting that experience on what to expect when they can enter the ground running. Obviously, I'll not spend much more time on it. If there are any questions, I can take it later. The next slide is talking more about. We're calling it an aligned program, and each of the terms here is very interesting. And this is really being piloted by our campus team, and they have a great success in engaging with the new hires after they have gotten the project. But how do they engage with them in creating an ecosystem for them to interact with people, and this is becoming much more important now during the pandemic, where you're not getting that physical interaction with people. They get an opportunity to meet with their peers, alumni, as well as leaders within the organization. And along with that, the networking part here is very critical. And I also wanted to touch upon the point that I think Nancy was making about the communicate and collaborate bit. It is so critical that unless we are able to have people open up and talk freely about what are the challenges they are facing, are they open and coming and communicating about the issues that they have, work-wise or otherwise, it is very difficult for managers or for peers to come and help anyone out. So communication, collaboration is critical, and also networking is very important. While everyone knows social networking, but the kind of networking, the kind of interactions that you have over social media and Instagram or Facebook is different compared to how you would want to do it in a more professional setting. And we have been part of some of those industry or academic programs with certain universities. I have spoken at San Jose State a couple of times on a topic which is very close to my heart, lifelong learning and networking. So there are a bunch of things that we are doing during the course of hiring, post-hiring. But I also talked about something that we have been doing at a K-12 level. I know that may not be so much relevant for this forum, but I just wanted to talk about one of the very strategic programs that we have been running in North America for over 10 years. We call it Go IT. And the intent with this is really to help students at a K-12 level really to design human-centered solutions, leveraging the technologies for innovation. And we try to bring in all the good stuff around design thinking, industry expertise, and to get the students taste how it feels and what are the skills necessary to create technology for social good. It ends up with typically with a idea pitching event. The most involved students are at the middle school level right now, and we are expanding it further. But over the period of the past almost, I would say 10 years, since we have been running it, we have been able to engage over 41,000 students across 120 cities in the US. So this is a great program. There are some other things, but this was, I think, one of the key things which I wanted to highlight, because by doing this, we are seeing the interest levels on STEM increase significantly among those students. That's all I had. Super happy again to be here, and any questions, we'll be happy to take them. Thanks.
All right. Well, thank you all so much for those wonderful presentations. So I'm gonna throw out a few questions, and you're all welcome to answer them, but you don't all have to answer each question. So we're going to start by talking some more about internships. Several of you mentioned those. So can we kind of dive in a little bit more? If you were advising a college or a university who wanted to start or expand an internship program, what would you advise them? Think of the interns that you've worked with or the internship programs that you've worked with that have kind of promising approaches or that have been working well, and let us know which aspects you think are most important for those internship opportunities for the students. Let's see. Renee, do you want to chime in there?
Sure, absolutely. Thank you, Carrie. So one of the things that's been exciting about Networking Academy is we've extended it to our partner community. And so the partners are actually offering internships. So for example, IBM, CDW, Verizon, Ingram Micro, and Red River, they all are hiring students who have Networking Academy certifications, actually Cisco certifications and Networking Academy backgrounds. So that just expands the pool because we have, thousands and thousands of channel partners who sell Cisco equipment. And so that's been a really nice venue for students to get internships. And then we also have examples where, for example, during the Olympics in Rio in Brazil in 2016, we had a company who was there in Brazil setting up all the networking equipment for the Olympics. And that company was assigned some Cisco Networking Academy students who helped them get everything prepared for the Olympics. And so he realized they were so well trained, they were great communicators, very articulate. And so as he went across the globe to participate in different networking things that he was doing, opportunities, his business, he would find the local networking academy in the city wherever he found himself, and he would use those students and hire those students to help him set up the equipment. So rather than flying networking professionals all over the globe, he's just doing that locally. So those were some exciting examples.
Great, thank you so much. How about Nancy and then Joe?
Sure. So I think first I would, as in the academic institutions, I think it's really important to get started early and earlier in the student, as early as you can with the student career and as early as you can in the year, to line up partnerships for your students by the summer, because we do a lot of summer internships and we bring students in from all over the country for those. And then we do have a few students that are offered year-round internships part-time, but they typically are students that have shown an aptitude and an ability for that particular group to meet that group's needs. I would give the students some training on how to build an academic resume that highlights their academic credentials. I recently looked at a student who had highlighted all about how they worked in a food industry, but nothing about the project work they had done or their coursework. And I thought, oh, if I just could have worked with the student on their resume a little bit, they would be able to highlight the good coursework that they had, because when we spoke to the student, they were a great candidate, but you would never have known that from their resume. So I would give them help on crafting a resume so that it looks appealing, at least from an R&D standpoint, for the type of job that they're looking for. So those are kind of two tips I would suggest. I would also maybe tip number 3 is go out as a recruiter in your academic institution and identify companies that will work with you. We have great programs to bring in STEM students from around the country, but I'm not sure that all the potential institutions know that, but there's a lot of companies that will work with you. So be proactive in reaching out to organizations to see if they will help bring your students on into their programs.
Great, thank you. Joe, can you tell us a little bit about more with the internships you've been involved with and the students your company has worked with through internships?
Yeah, thanks, Carrie. I mean, we typically, Cal Poly has a strawberry center that they work with, obviously California Giant as well as other berry companies donate money to fund the strawberry center. And then typically the interns that we have are based in Watsonville or Santa Maria, California, which Santa Maria is probably 20 miles south of San Luis Obispo. So typically we would hire network with professors or have other students that have been referred had a previous internship with the company. Obviously we're not that large of a company, so it's not like we have global internships and like Renee has pretty fascinating internships that they had at that company. But with like Patrick, obviously he's involved with Cal Poly. We're really looking for, and obviously I got my undergrad there, but it's more of a hands-on approach. It's a learn by doing approach, like he mentioned. He's on the advisory board down there, so we tend to go towards Cal Poly or UC Davis for potential ag interns.
Great, thank you so much. I wanted to kind of transition to talking a little bit more about those kind of immersive, experiential, real-world learning experiences, and kind of what you see as good qualities of a program that offers those experiences to students. I mean, internships is one way, but there's other possibilities. So I thought Ahmed or Patrick, you might have some thoughts on that based on what you touched on in your presentations.
Yeah, I think other than internships, there's company-sponsored projects, usually senior projects, but and I've been involved at Rensselaer RPI and MIT and other places where these are multiple semester projects. In other words, there's teams of students moving on and new teams coming in and picking up where the old teams left off. And one that's ongoing right now is we have a cornhole game down at Cal Poly. As you know, that's the beanbag game, throw a beanbag in a hole, but basically they're going to digitize it so that when the bag goes through the hole, they detect that. If the bag is on the board but not in the hole, they detect that. If a board, and with a cell phone app that will then send the data to keep score, an automatic scorekeeper. So that's one thing we've been working on. The pandemic slowed us down. The first team, it surprised me because of the pandemic that they got pretty far along, but it's still in progress. At RPI, we had a team of students who did a teardown. Well, they did teardowns of competitive devices. So we were at the time coming out with a new product and wanted to go into the Fitbit and had to prove to them that our product was met the specifications. So the first thing we had to do was find out what the competition was doing, what their current levels were and performance and things. And that was a student project that was quite successful, but you have to have a mentor, and it's typically not me, although in terms of the cornhole game, it was me, but you need a system expert who's really interested in getting the data. In other words, the reason they're doing this is because they don't have the resources to do it themselves. And it also has to be a project that students are capable of doing. So it depends on the university you're at too, and the level of then faculty involvement. So there's programs like at Cal Poly, I think it's $2,500 a summer, where you can hire basically a faculty member and a student team to work on some real time research. And of course, we're not gonna spend any money, frankly, to work on research that isn't useful to us, because why would we? We don't do it in the factory. Why would we do it in the university? No matter how altruistic we want to be, we still got to stay a step ahead of our competitors. And so we haven't worked on real world problems, or this cornhole thing is kind of a fun project, except the thing is cornhole's very popular. They show it on TV for the college cornhole competitions, and I just have visions of all these cornhole games with Infineon logos. You can become a GitHub project or whatever, across campuses. So I guess that I'll let someone else speak now.
Yeah, I will just add there. As I mentioned, we have some of these. So internships are one. We do have our own set of internships, but the other thing is wherever we are funding these researches, one way that we have been able to leverage and bring really industry and academia together, getting the students involved more, is we have set up what we call as base sports, where we have a certain business problem which one of our customers is facing. We get the customers and we get some of the students which are part of some of the research functions. We also get our own teams, plus we we fund and we work with a large innovation arm as well. We call it the Coin Network, where we work with a number of startups. So we get all these different entities together and try to address different business problems. It could be related to a process, it could be related to a certain product, it could be related to a certain function. We try to do it. We have had a great success on it. We have set up something in North America, New York. So we have a passport at New York. We were in the process of setting it up in our Santa Clara office, but because of the pandemic, it is delayed. But that again, the passport model of doing things, where we are bringing all the different sets of skills and experience together. I think that has worked very well for us as well as our customers, and we continue to do that.
Great, thank you so much. Let's see. So we have some questions that came up in the chat. I was going to have Renee answer a couple that are there, and then I was going to ask Scott if you'd be willing to ask your question out loud after Renee finishes talking. So Renee, the ones I see in the chat are, if a 2-year or a 4-year college wanted to partner with the Net Academy, where would they start? And can you expand any on how Cisco has expanded into online learning over the last 20 months?
Yeah, absolutely. And thank you, Carrie, for reading those out. I don't have the interface here that I'm seeing on the screen. But so I think a great place to start, certainly you can call me. I'm happy to put you in touch with the right people. But even just going to the Cisco Networking Academy page, there's a place for students. There's a place for 2- and 4-year colleges to get started. And it really is just, deciding that you want to have a program, figuring out which of the programs you'd like to offer, being able to obtain the content and the curriculum from Cisco, and then setting up an on-site lab. And then we provide 90% discounts on the lab equipment so that you can provide students with the hands-on experience. So that's really the traditional Networking Academy program. So it's a great complement to, software engineering, computer science, the existing curriculum. So it can definitely be augmented, or students can just take NetAcad programs and then move into obtaining certifications. So I think that's the answer to the 2-4 question. One of the things that's been really exciting and also has grown out of COVID is just the whole idea of providing secure hybrid learning environments. So that's really kind of what we've been doing. We've also done that with Networking Academy. So a new program that we now have is an online program called Skills for All. And so any of us could go out to Skills for All, and we could take these basic courses in IT, networking, cybersecurity, the Internet of Things. And I think this is such a nice, easy way to complement existing programs. So again, you don't set up the labs, but students can go directly to those to the online Skills for All program. And I think it's also great from an exposure perspective. They can start seeing what they might be interested in pursuing, and it gives them kind of a low risk way to engage in that curriculum. Thank you for the questions.
Great. Did any of the other panelists have things that seem relevant to what Renee is talking about there? I'd chime in on. Okay, then we'll move over to Scott. You had multiple questions there. If you could pick one and ask it, and if there's a certain person you're hoping to answer, you can indicate that, but we'll give everyone a chance to answer if multiple people want to chime in.
Thanks very much. Fascinating conversation. I'm curious how for undergraduates to develop further the hand aspect in MIT's Mens et Manus, a mind in hand, and even regarding CC4 opencourseware.mit.edu. If there was a way to bring in undergraduates studying MIT OpenCourseware and add the engineering aspect in your various internship programs, how might that work? How to bring further the physical hands aspect into internship programs, STEM internship programs for undergraduates, based on what you're developing already? Thanks.
Well, let me jump in there. First of all, Cypress and now Infineon has been teaching a 3-day 4-credit course at MIT during the IAP sessions in January. We'll be doing that again. So speaking of hands-on, what we're looking at is the first 2 days teaching the technology and software development. And then the third day, we're getting basically one of these remote car kits from Amazon, and there'll be teams, and they'll say, well, basically throw away. Well, throw away might be too strong a word, but they will not use things. They're going to use our PSOC instead of an Arduino that it's included with, and so they'll be able to control this car for their phone. Beyond that, I think the hands-on aspect, whenever we have an internship, it's going to be hands-on at our company. You're expected to do something, whether it's help characterize a new part, or whether it's an out-of-box experience with a new kit, or creating some sort of application and then writing an app note. So at a company, and of course I'm strictly talking about the technical side of the company, because obviously we have finance internships and we have HR internships, and so on, and those projects would be different. But yeah, from my side, the semiconductor side, there will always be hands-on projects by definition.
Are there any of the other panelists that want to respond to that question? Okay, Patrick covered it well.
Yeah, just to quickly add to it, what I even presented earlier, Kerry and Scott, even the K-12 thing that I talked about, the Go IT initiative, even at that level, the kind of programs or the kind of challenges that we are typically working or throwing at students is, based on some of these kits, or where they're actually, it's not only making a PPT really, to put it very simply. It is really to be able to create something, show it, demo it to the, and there what we are doing is, obviously they are middle school students typically. So for them, we are not just leaving them high and dry. We are getting them to work with some of our employees who volunteer for these activities, and where we also train our employees so that they understand how to work with students at that level, so that they have a more cohesive and good learning experience.
Great, thank you very much. I noted that Patrick mentioned the Electrical and Computing Engineers Department Head Association, and I note that this is an association or a society. Are there other kind of partnerships that you all have, or societies or associations you've worked with that you think could help kind of link the academic and industry, and help facilitate some of these more immersive or internship type experiences? Any kind of
Carrie,
stories?
this is Joe Barcy here. The PMA, which is the Produce Marketing Association, the United Fresh Association, they've just merged, but they've historically had a program for students where they'd send, over 40 students from 30 different universities throughout the world to the actual annual Produce Marketing Association convention, and they would set up different sessions for them to interview industry leaders, as well as walk the show floor and get to meet companies involved in the obviously the fresh produce space. But it's been a pretty successful program with introducing students to the produce world. So that's just one example of kind of what our industry has done to kind of bridge the gap between academia and having a career in produce.
Well, I didn't put it on the slide, but American Society of Engineering Educators, of course, is the largest group, I think, in the U.S. Their annual conference, I'm on their corporate membership council. But then there's a lot of little offshoots, Frontiers in Education, Teaching and Learning, Engineering and Education. And so, I mean, if you really look, there's plenty of these conferences. And what I typically do during normal times is I rotate through them. So I don't go to every conference every year, because I might not have something new to show them. If I'm just going to go to show them what I showed last year, why go again? But there's another conference I didn't go to last year that I can show them something new. So there's plenty of them out there if you just look for them.
At a smaller level, just what we've, in the 3 universities in our area, the educators have reached out to have career days, and they'll invite companies to come in, and we'll go in and we'll talk with students on a table by table basis. And then we also have a program that we sponsor for visual design. So usability type design. And that's a course that's we sponsor at the university. And the students get a project to work on that we have sponsored, and that they present their findings at the end of that semester on that whole usability aspect of the design. So there's a number of these kind of smaller things that you can do if you just like reach out outside your academic institution to local companies, and you may find that there's those kinds of local partnerships that would work.
Yeah, Santa Clara University does this typically. In fact, the last one of these I attended was in 2019 at Santa Clara University. So they, it's just a tabletop event, very kind of informal. You just go set up. It's only a couple hours long, and they're less than a mile from my office, so pretty easy to do.
Great. So that transitioned us really nicely to what I wanted to do next, which is the kind of the partnerships with the colleges and universities directly. Does anyone have anything they haven't shared yet that they could help us expand in how we think about these partnerships between industry and academia?
Carrie, just one example that I wanted to share in terms of how people are using the content and curriculum. So you can do kind of the traditional program, the Skills for All, but we have some universities who are really creatively applying the existing content. So for example, Curtin University in Australia is using the Networking Academy content around the Internet of Things. And they are basically just taking that curriculum off the shelf, working with local business partners within Perth. And then they've taken that and turned it into a MicroMaster's degree. So it's part of a MicroMaster's degree within Curtin. So I think that whole idea of mixing and matching stackable credentials, being able to kind of scan the landscape of what's out there, mapping it to your current program offerings, and then being able to, combine it into a certification, a boot camp, or, a MicroMaster's degree. So we've seen that happen very effectively, not only in Australia, but globally.
Yeah, I've always looked to Cisco as a world-class training organization. Even back when I was doing a survey for Xilinx at the time of who the best training organizations were. So kudos to Cisco. They've always been up there at the top level. What I was going to say also is I'm currently working on an online course that's going to be free. Of course, it's going to promote, Infineon software and technology, but the student or whomever, because anyone who has an internet access will be able to access this. It will be they will be able to earn a certificate or digital badge that they can put on their LinkedIn page or their resume. And in some places, this is a bigger deal than others. But even now, when I do the in-person workshops, I offer to send the students a certificate post-workshop, and really a certificate of completion. I'm certainly not saying, oh, this guy's a great engineer because they attended my course. We make that clear. There's legal implications there. But yeah, I'm looking forward to getting that, because I see that as especially after a year and a half of doing these virtual workshops and things, I see that is not going away. I don't think it'll ever replace face-to-face. But this will be an adjunct to that, and also kind of democratize the education in that anyone anywhere in the world, whether or not they're near a university, will be able to learn something if they so desire.
I'd like to add
a comment.
Yeah.
I just
Nancy, finish on the on this topic, and then we can have a new comment from the Lou. Is that all right?
Okay. So that what Infineon's doing, SAS offers certifications through their SAS Academy, and you can go out and get SAS certifications, and you get a nice little LinkedIn badge. We have a language that we promote. That is actually a really great way to get into our company, is for students to go take some of those certifications. And we offer scholarships for them. Universities, if they could promote things like that, that would be a great way to just sort of let students show that they're interested in our company, and also that they have some of the skills that we need.
Great, thank you so much. Lou, what did you want to contribute?
I just wanted to add that we've recently realized that companies don't understand how to connect to our College of Engineering at San Jose State University. And so what we've done is we've sort of established a point of contact person who would be the person who would assure the company that there's somebody there who can represent their interests across the college departments, and also assist them with setting up internship opportunities inside their companies. Perhaps more of a realization by the colleges that they need to have a way to communicate centrally with company representatives rather than trying to assume or assuming that the companies know how to get to a department chair or a college dean or an associate dean to make things happen that they are interested in promoting. So that would be my comment there. And as far as my own experience, the dean has appointed me to be the point of contact for local companies that want to establish partnerships of any sort, internships, sponsored research, whatever the companies would like to do with the college, she would point them to me first to get that started.
We'll be talking, Lou. Just mention that with San Jose State, again, very local to me, I have been working with David Parent, Donald Hung, and in fact, I did a virtual workshop with David Parent and his students over the summer. So, and
that's great to hear. See, that represents exactly what I'm talking about. Those are two very active faculty members with two very active research and undergraduate teaching interests, and I'm glad you connected with them. But there are many other faculty and opportunities across the college that you probably don't know, and so those are the ones that I'd like to represent to you.
I'll be contacting you offline for sure.
Sure, thanks.
Great, thank you so much for sharing that specific example and also the concept that other colleges and universities might be able to replicate to help foster these partnerships more nationally. Great, so I want to turn to the question Yasi has posted in the chat, which is the same one she posted to us right at the beginning. So now we can kind of, as we're moving towards the end, we can maybe pull together all the information that we've already shared and think about the main attributes of those undergraduate programs that you believe align well with industry's needs. So we're going to go back through all five of the panelists and give you each a chance to answer that one directly. So, does anyone want to volunteer to go first?
Can you repeat the question again, Carrie?
Yes, so the question is, what are the main attributes of undergraduate programs that align well with industry needs?
I'd be happy to jump in, Carrie. I also wanted to just add one thing to what Lou said. It's such a great call out because so often as businesses, as companies, we have sort of the traditional stakeholders who we work with within the organization. So for example, at San Jose State, we work very closely with the CIO, but it's not necessarily connecting back to the teams who need to have an awareness of programs like, you know, the Networking Academy and others that have been discussed today. So I think it's such a good call out because awareness is oftentimes the biggest challenge that we have. So thank you for that. I thought that was great. I think in terms of the attributes, we really think in terms of what are the real world problems that we need people to solve. So we're looking at sort of the hard skills in areas like, you know, overall IT, how to build and maintain the internet, certainly cybersecurity, the Internet of Things, and even things like being open-minded about virtual reality, augmented reality, artificial intelligence, esports programs, the whole array of technologies that are emerging and how we can help students to be, you know, equip them to be able to address opportunities in those areas. I think when I think of some of the soft skills, certainly I love the matrix that you shared. So all of those soft skills, but I think curiosity is critically important. So students need to be curious about the problems that need to be solved, certainly critical thinking, how to engage. I love Nancy's comments about communication and collaboration. How do they reach out and really build connection with people, help to build relationships, because we're trying to train them not only to do these jobs, but to lead and manage people eventually into the future. So I think that call out about mindfulness and how do you really create an environment where people are present and focused on the problems that we need to solve.
Thank you
Yeah,
so much. That was great. Go ahead.
I would say, well, the first, again, speaking from the technical side, say an EE grad, we expect them to know which end of a soldering iron can hurt them. So, you know, they got to know all the fundamentals. But again, to go back to lifelong learning or self learning, really, because um, if I'm your boss and you're coming in, and let's say it's a new project that maybe I don't even know much about, um, but if I assign it to you, I expect you to go and learn it on yourself. I don't by yourself. I don't expect you to come to me other than, you know, for some direction and answer some questions. But um, you know, you have to be organized and ready, like I said, to hit the ground running, and then also, you know, that often requires soft skills because you may have to ask someone from another department for some help, and so on. So yeah, I mean, basically a basic level of intelligence and knowledge of the fundamental skills of engineering, whether it's computer science or whether it's electrical, and then the ability to learn on your own.
Yeah, I would just like to add, I think Rennie and Ken covered most of it. A couple of points from my side which I just want to add on to that is, oftentimes we see that the students have a very good handle on the technical aspects of it, but they may or may not be able to see the big picture on why they are doing what they are doing. And as you know, someone sitting in an industry or anyone, I think the biggest thing that can be done within industry and academia partnership is for the folks from industry to early help those students see the big picture. If I understand better on why I'm doing what I'm doing, I might be writing a piece of code, but how does it actually help sitting in a network make a 5G call? That makes it much more exciting for me. So how do we make sure that the students are able to understand that big picture, getting that human-centered aspect to it? I think will go a long way.
Yeah, I think just building on that, whenever I'm at a workshop or something, whenever I can pull out something from my pocket that's also in a student's pocket, say a cell phone or something, and tell them what technology of ours they're using every day, that gets them interested and is a compelling argument for why they should be doing what they're doing.
I'll jump in. So from our technology area, our space, everyone should have a grounding in statistics. And honestly, I think everyone should have a grounding in statistics, even if it's a basic statistics class, because I use it all the time in so many different areas. And then of course the AI and machine learning, they should be able to know some aspects of that for when they come out, and be able to apply those skills to a real world problem and visualize the data correctly, so they don't use a bar chart that goes down when it's really the data is going up, and the colors are not dark when they're really positive, things like that. Being able to just understand how to tell a data story correctly so that they can get their ideas across. Those are pretty important skills for the AI data side of things. But to build on the other ones, I love the big picture comment. That is probably one of the big challenges folks that come out from the university will struggle with, that we have seen. And so being able to just take a step back and survey the landscape. Should I build this new predictive model using the latest deep learning algorithm when regression analysis will solve it, is a great thing to just for students to just be able to kind of step back and say, what's the easy answer here versus what's the complicated answer? And sometimes the easiest answer is the right thing. And then the other final one I would say is being able to know where to go to continue to learn. Is the journey does not stop when they walk out of the door. It's continuous. And people will be happier if they realize that initially and keep going in that learning space, because the industry is constantly changing, and you will immediately become obsolete in a year if you're not on top of kind of what's going on. So knowing how to learn, developing a learning mindset, I think is a really important skill.
I guess probably the last panelist here. I mean, you guys have mentioned so many key important things. Of course, I know Nancy mentioned fundamentals and statistics. Obviously, people have to have a kind of a basis of education. Of course, reading, writing, arithmetic. We're in a unique business, and I say, I think we're all in a relationship business, but some unique examples of, I guess a relationship business would be some of our growers, of course, are college educated, but some of them aren't, right? Some of them were, immigrated here from Mexico. And so for students, to be able to, or, new employees to be able to connect with not only executives, but also be able to connect with, um, you know, Mexican American growers, or growers that speak English as their second language, is important. And not to borrow, I'm a big fan of Patrick Lencioni, and when I go to interview people myself, the humble, hungry, smart. Smart doesn't mean book smart; it just means the emotional intelligence of being able to deal with people. And I know it's been mentioned multiple times throughout this session, but I think it's so important to be able to connect with people. And then, of course, communication, written and verbal, public speaking, all of those things that are important.
Great, thank you so much. So several of you mentioned things that are kind of, oh, Yasi, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you so much for those answers. That was really great. My question has another angle to this, which is what attributes of university or community colleges programs that you consider are exemplars of programs that align with industry needs. And if you can comment on that, that would also be great. Does that question make sense?
I could handle that first of all. Yes, it does. I mean, not, a 4-year degree is not for everyone, of course. And, especially this day and age, I know I place a lot of emphasis and value on it. However, there are, I guess, technical degrees you can get from a junior college, especially in agriculture, that can relate to kind of our business at California Giant. So, there are definitely opportunities like a Hartnell College or even a Cabrillo College here in Aptos that have certain programs that would allow students to be involved in agriculture.
Yeah, I think, see, it's partly on the corporations. So I'm on the Industry Advisory Board at Cal Poly in the EE department. So we discuss what we need out of their students, and when they're going to change their curriculum, which is about every 4 or 5 years, or make changes to it. In fact, right now they're changing from a quarter system to a semester system, so I expect that to be a bit of a mess. And but anyhow, yeah, I think industry is responsible in terms of when they sponsor a student project or a senior project, there needs to be someone from the company who's going to be a mentor and who agrees to be a mentor. And typically, it's not all that time consuming. I find you have a long call at the beginning of the project to explain it, what you want, clarify any questions, what are you expecting as the deliverables. Then you have a midterm review. In the meantime, I may actually go and do a course on the technology and the software they're going to be using to complete the project, to get them up to speed, save them a couple weeks time doing that on their own. And you have a midterm review, and then you have a final review. And you can grade the project, and many schools use the industry's final review as part of the student's final grade too. So I think industry is partly responsible for this, coming up with good projects, real world problems, and things that they find useful. Because why would you spend your time and money if it wasn't going to be useful in some way?
Great, thanks. Anyone else?
I'd probably come at it a little bit on the other side, and maybe in line with what Lou was saying. We are, like everybody, very busy. Everyone's really busy. And I think there's some onus on the university to make sure that the students are successful in these partnership programs. And I have worked on some that have not been very successful, and I've worked on some that have been. The characteristics that I've seen where the students are successful is the university is extremely vested in those students' success. And so they provide them with all the training that they might not already have, like how to organize a project or how to how to get past technology challenges. Putting that on the industry mentor to pick between flight and some other project that the students have to pick up from the open source just won't succeed. So having academic experts there who know technology and who can help the students make choices between what kind of database to set up for their data is really critical to being able to make sure that the students are successful. And the final person in that triad is the coordinator who coordinates that program, which is what Lou was trying to say. If there are 10 people, it will be really hard for industry to know that and who to go to. It really needs one person that speaks for that collaboration project so that everyone knows who to go to if there's a challenge or a problem.
Yeah, it's interesting. I certainly can't disagree with you because we're in kind of totally different areas. We are definitely coming from different angles. If when I'm talking about a student project, it's typically going to involve some semiconductor hardware and software. But I certainly see your point. And, I do agree that, if you look at it, the students are the university's customers, but we are also the university's customers because we're going to wind up using the university's product just to, to take it at a high level. And the universities that put out a better product are going to have a better relationship with industry, frankly. So
that's a great point. Thanks.
Just one thing I wanted to add here is we have been talking a lot about university, but also internally facing for the industry for a certain company. So whoever is typically the person who is interfacing with the universities, he or she should also be the ambassador for that university within the company. Because a lot of times as people sitting in business, we are just running around with our own challenges and timelines. How does that person make sure that the value that is being brought by this partnership with the university is really clearly understood by the business, so that we have the right investment and time, effort, whatever, from the business as well on that is super critical.
Yeah, again, there's a broad spectrum. I mean, everybody, no one is incorrect. It depends on what your project is, what your company does, and so on and so forth.
Well, thank you to all these panelists for your wonderful presentations and this great discussion, and for providing such a diverse view of the different sorts of projects and students and jobs that are out there. So thank you very much for taking the time to prepare these presentations and for participating today. And Yasi, do you have directions for us on what's coming next?
Sure. First of all, thank you, everyone. Thank you, Carrie, for moderating this great panel, and thank all the speakers and all the participants who made this a lively discussion. So we're gonna take a break for 10 minutes. We really hope that most of you would come back after the break. And then I'll present very shortly a part of the survey that I mentioned, and for about 5 minutes. And then we're scheduled to get into breakout sessions, but depending on how many people will come back, we will either have a breakout session or an open discussion on continuing on these topics. I know I have several questions and would love to engage with all of you in those. So please come back at 11 and we'll get started again. For those of you who can, come back at 11. Thank you so much.
Thanks. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. So I hope everyone had a nice break. And we'll get started on the second half of the workshop. Before actually we go into open discussions, I would like to share part of the results of the survey that we've been conducting. I mentioned that we've been conducting a survey along with these workshops. And so there was one question that was germane to the topics of this workshop. And the question was, do you have any further comments on or thoughts about the content of STEM BSBA curriculums in the future? If so, please describe. So we got close to 30 comments of the 51 total surveys that we have conducted so far. And pick these 6. They all were great comments, but in the interest of time, I picked this 6. So actually, during the session, we heard about the need for ethics And several people also in the survey discussed the need for ethics. And this one actually proposed maybe there's a strong focus towards social audits and social certifications. Therefore, some type of course or curriculum that teaches students about social audits may be considered. So that's a feedback for our academic colleagues. Another one said AI literacy is behind where it needs to be today, and it's not moving as fast as it needs to catch up. This is also consistent with other parts of our survey where AI and actually data science were categorized as high demand by industry, yet student preparedness in this area got a low score. So several comments actually multiple comments were around project-based learning, and we heard from our panelists also how industry and academia engage on project-based learning to offer a superior experience for students. And the comments were that these project-based learning would be stronger if they were designed with industry. Then there were a couple of comments about interdisciplinary projects and the need for multidisciplinary, where students could major in one area, but also add another area that's of their interest, for example, computer science and maybe design thinking. And then, so you see a few comments about interdisciplinarity, need for interdisciplinarity projects. The fourth one was actually interesting. I do think training in emotional intelligence, ethics, collaboration skills, presentation skills, and learning how to work in a team efficiently and with minimal drama are all skills that will serve young people well for a lifetime. Combine those with skills and passion for learning and a curious mindset, and they will be very well positioned for successful careers and happy lives. Interestingly, this comment didn't talk anything about hard skills, technical skills, and that's something to consider for higher education leaders. And again, that last comment is about fostering interdisciplinary skills. So, you know, just wanted to share some of these comments. They, I see a lot of similarities here with what we heard this morning. And any thoughts, comments would be greatly appreciated. Stop sharing. Can't I stop sharing? And my oh, sorry. Some reason. It's my WebEx. I can't seem to get my act together. Okay, looks like I'm not. Okay, stop sharing. All right. So, that was a bit of what we've learned through our survey. Now, what we had originally scheduled, assuming based on past events that we'll have about 25 to 30 people left in the meeting, was to actually go into breakout sessions. But I think given the number of people here, we can actually have an open discussion. So what we had designed for the breakout sessions, I'll put these questions, and I started asking those of the panelists. But I would love to get your thoughts on these. Let me share again. Should stop sharing. All right. So, so the three questions are, as I said, I started asking these from our panelists. What are the attributes of colleges, universities, curricula, pedagogies that in your view best prepare graduates for the demand in industry? Are there specific colleges, universities that you view as leaders, and why? How do these leaders respond to the rapid rate of technological change to maintain their relevance? So this is what I had originally. I also want to ask Carrie, as the panel moderator, if there are questions, Carrie, that you think we should discuss in the next 15 minutes together. I saw Carrie on, but maybe. Maybe Carrie had to drop off.
I don't think she's on.
Yeah, she's not on. Okay. Yeah, so I would, I want to open it up. I won't call on you because, I don't want to put you on the spot. But I really welcome for anyone to share your thoughts on some of these questions and all of these questions. So who would like to start?
Yeah, see, I'll start. This is Justin.
Oh, hi, Justin.
Hi, sorry I came in late.
No problem. Wonderful to have you.
So I think in terms of attributes of colleges, universities that best prepare students, it's those that I think are deliberate in providing students with experiences outside of the college, and that have relationships with industry partners. Coming from a university where I don't think many of my professors had that experience, they were mostly just PhDs who did research. I think lacked a significant amount of knowledge when it came to what are the demands of students outside of the college.
Excellent points you raised. And Justin, can you remind me which are you still with? Sorry, which institution are you with?
Yeah, I'm with Foothill College, and
Okay.
more specifically the Krause Center for Innovation at Foothill College.
Right. Yeah. Excellent. And And so,
This is Nancy. I can jump in a little bit here. I definitely would agree with, I think that was Joel, that it is the universities that have gone out of their way to build those relationships with industry, to ensure that their students get experiences outside of the classroom, are the ones that, in my mind, are sort of the best in terms of preparing students for the industry. And then to number three, even being in the area that I am in, which is really on the forefront of AI technology from the standpoint of from industry standpoint, I would say, or at least in close to the forefront, industry I would say behind in terms of basic research. Not behind, but it is not their primary goal. Their primary goal is to develop products, at least in my area, and sell them. And so students do not necessarily need to be on the forefront of the technological world, because they do need to be able to bring the domain skills that they have to bear on business challenges, and the business challenges frequently aren't the latest deep learning algorithm and how accurate it is to the nth degree. Now, we do have those kinds of challenges sometimes that we run into, and we do expect students to be able to find solutions to some of those problems. But I think that the better answer is that they have a broad understanding. So it's almost like they need to sort of be able to say, here's the challenges, and I understand in this space, this might be the right approach. In that space, that might be the right approach, as opposed to being so deep into like one specific tiny little area that they can't necessarily move it out of that one area to anything else.
excellent. Any other thoughts?
This is Justin again. I'm just gonna kind of talk to some of the things that we're doing at Foothill, and more specifically within our organization at KCI. We've created a partnership between us and Ignited for Education. If anyone here is familiar with Ignited, they do teacher externships, K-12, during the summer. And so we've been really diving into some of these technologies that such as AI and data science, cybersecurity, and educating K-12 teachers to understand like why these technologies are important to teach your students. And then in addition to that, we've been really putting a spotlight on our community college teachers, who many of them do have experience in industry that they take with them to the community college experience. And we have community college teachers teaching the K-12 teachers about some of these topics. And so that's just one way that we are really working with industry partners and with government grants to incorporate some of these things that we talk about that our students need to be familiar with. And so those are just some of the things, and hopefully, they come through the community college system and they go on to 4-year, and that's, we're trying to build that pathway so that they're prepared for industry when they come out.
I might
It's great.
add something here.
Of course. Please, Lou.
Well, at San Jose State, we've been reaching out to industry as much as possible to incorporate industry interests into our curriculum, as well as our graduate job opportunities that they can explore. One of the things they've been doing over the last 15 years, I think, is something called the Silicon Valley Leadership forum where every Thursday there's a talk scheduled during the semester by a Silicon Valley executive from some company around us that helps undergraduates understand what those companies do, what kinds of needs they have, and what kind of opportunities they have. And that's a required seminar or lecture on the part of many of our undergraduate curriculums that students attend most every week inside of our college. Our senior design projects are essentially a way to break out of our university environment to get contact with local companies, and most of our curriculums have senior design projects that are on site at local companies and corporations. I think there are also many master's projects where master's students are employed by these companies and work on projects inside the companies as their culminating experience in their master's degree program. So I think there's lots of attributes of colleges that are working toward those agendas that you could probably identify and see if if they check off relative to their interests in bonding with industry.
That's great. I'm curious. Well, before that, any other thoughts?
May I ask a question?
Please.
So we are hearing from the speakers who are from bigger companies and also Silicon Valley campuses. And yes, industry, but what are some of the efforts that the big companies are doing to engage what I call underrepresented campuses? So what we're hearing, and it's part of my own experience, that big companies tend, the employees go back to their alma mater and engage their alma mater. But there are many, regionally, many regions that are not engaged with these bigger companies that have bigger efforts. Maybe some speakers can talk about are there efforts in their company to engage what I call underrepresented campuses so that you can reach a population that typically do not have the pipeline to these bigger to employers outside their regions.
Any thoughts on that?
I wonder, Joanne, how this could be done more fully now online, even thanks to the last 18 to 20 months of COVID-19 pandemic self-quarantine, whether there might be opportunities for companies to newly reach out with intern programs online that to underrepresented campuses and potentially invite those students further, even from other countries, into on-the-ground physical intern programs as one possibility. Does the internet newly in the past 2 years reshape some of these questions is perhaps one response.
I think that's a great point in that the online presence really has opened up opportunities to include more students from diverse backgrounds into our internship program. Our company has a special program specifically to try to reach out to universities, smaller universities, those with underserved populations in the STEM area, explicitly to give internships to students from those universities and from those backgrounds. But I do think industry does have a responsibility to do that sort of thing, and I'm very proud of our company for doing that. And I agree that that's something, it has to kind of go both ways. Industry has to know about the universities that are available, and then universities have to kind of promote getting their students into these programs. But I do think online does offer more opportunities there.
I'd like to jump in with a couple of quick points on what we're just talking about. I'm a big fan of our current congressman from Silicon Valley, who has been working on going beyond his normal constituency and just realizing that we need a workforce and it's not forthcoming, and which is part of why we're all here. And a couple of initiatives he's had are around just trying to get sort of that education being spread out to other places, and one of them is around land grant universities and trying to do things in like Iowa and West Virginia and places where workers are being displaced, and STEM skills, are very applicable to coal mine family, historically coal mining areas and things along those lines. So I think that's one concept around the regional thing. It's not as grand as just, being able to just be remote, and it doesn't really matter so much where you are, which I think is also takes shape. The other point I wanted to make is that I believe that a big part of the charter of all of this is to help inform the NSF on, what colleges and universities can do in terms of practices. And today, I mean, all these workshops have been great. A lot of really interesting points, and almost all of them just totally land with me. And I'm like so glad to hear other people saying these things, and especially the very practical tips that people have had. But what the last couple of workshops, what I've been noticing is that there's a special, affection for the very applied universities, the San Jose States and the Cal Polys and the UC Davis that have these industry connections. It's very natural. But I wanted to sort of speak to the colleges. I think Patrick made the point about a Reed, a much more traditional liberal arts school, and thinking about the very high-end schools that are, can graduate a lot of people, but, and more of them are going into computer science, so maybe that's not as much of an issue. But just traditional universities in general, how can they learn from this process, learn from all the learning we're using now, to have more of an applied track as an option, so that you don't have to change the identity of the university, but people want that particular university experience, but also want more of an applied model. What does that look like, and what kind of tools and resources could we provide to help them down that path to the extent that they're interested? And then on the flip side of that, just, there's this very applied thing, which are all the boot camps and these things where people are like learning best practices just to get out into a job, maybe towards a certification, but often just towards generalized programming capabilities or data science capabilities and things like that. And I feel like we should, somewhere in the output of all of these workshops, be thinking about, those two problems, like how to broaden the umbrella, so it's not, you don't have to be an applied university to be really good at this, and also what can we learn from the boot camps and hacker camps, and how do they fit into what the NSF does, because it's all about workforce stuff, and I know that helps. Obviously universities are a target for that, but maybe there's some synergy there.
Rick, I think you make a great point. And to me, it gets to the question of what incentivizes those faculty and staff in the 2-year, 4-year colleges that actually do get engaged with these programs, like San Jose State University. There have to be some faculty and staff who are passionate about these programs and get it off the ground and make it successful. And I think part of what I think the point of this research should be is, what are those things that incentivize such programs, and why? What is it? Is the absence of those incentives in the schools that don't do more of these? Because I'm bewildered that we know these programs work. We know They benefit students, they benefit companies, they benefit the institution because students are happier. But why do we see more of these programs across the nation? And to me, maybe something to delve in and to dig is what incentivizes stakeholders to get engaged.
I'll give you one opinion, and that's the elephant in the room, and that's the criteria by which retention, promotion, and tenure are managed at the university level. Connections with industry are not in the list per se. I mean, it's very hard to incentivize faculty to look away from the publishing and from the laboratory research and from the other kinds of incentives that their promotions and tenure revolve around, in my opinion. And that's always been the case. So for engineering, it's a little easier, but often companies have very strict boundaries on what can be published. So it doesn't really pay a faculty member to do applied research at an industry where they can't publish it. And so those are the kinds of things that are sort of holding this thing back. That's why a point of contact kind of model, I think, is probably, because as a point of contact, I can talk to the kinds of issues that faculty are facing, as well as the kinds of interests that the industry has.
I'm going to jump on that one just because I was lucky enough to have an amazing professor who's pretty well known in the world, Andy Van Dam at Brown. He's basically the pioneer of the computer graphics industry, and his approach to even though Brown is one of those schools I was describing earlier that tends to be more ivory tower, he was incredibly applied, and a lot of, and he was on Bill Gates's board at Microsoft, and really forged these industry partnerships mainly for funding. So there's the tenure track element, but there's also, if you establish yourself as a real good base of whether it's mostly research but some level of applied technologies, that companies are willing to sort of take that all these things that we've been talking about and make that a very tangible, like there's a grant for that's very available. I think professors, there's tenure, which is an internal incentive, but there's also departmental objectives around funding. And there's so much money in all the things we're talking about that are helping industry, that it feels like as long as it can be well honed and well orchestrated, so that the people are actually getting the work done, and there's pretty clear objectives along the lines of every program that I've heard. I mean, I love the Cisco program, so those sound really terrific, but anything that's like actually applicable to these companies, the more we can systematize that in a grant program, I think that's one possible thing that should get a little more attention. It might already be kind of well known, but it feels like that should be called out.
Yeah, that's a great point. And I'm wondering, Lou and other colleagues from academia who might know this, a professor only can be on a tenure track, or are there other possibilities in a university? I'm thinking adjunct professors who are lecturers from a lot of times from industry. Are they even incentivized by tenure track? And can universities really promote that type of career growth?
I can answer it from my experience. Tenure track refers to full-time professors, assistant, associate, and full professors. That's what we refer to as tenure track. There is adjunct faculty as well, very competent and very active, that can be incentivized, but in a different model.
Yossi, this is Terry, and I'll chime in too and explain my links in the chat. As Lou is saying, there's a variety of employment models. And I think one of the things that it comes back to is the tenure track faculty are focusing on research. So at least 50% usually. So you can think about a model where half is research, or not quite half, and then not quite half on teaching, and then professional service, sort of keeping everything running. And then adjunct faculty typically are being hired, and this is shifting a little bit, but they're going to be hired to go in and teach a particular class. And in some settings, the union will even say, and you cannot do anything beyond what is actually in that contract. So it gets dicey. It's also very diverse, right? The universities vary dramatically. The European universities, I think, do a far better job of bringing the ties across academic and industry partnerships together. And maybe those companies in Europe, and maybe I'm just seeing, through rose-colored glasses here, but that the European companies are more open to letting people publish research done within their context. But I think this idea of, grants from the companies around questions that the companies have, I mean, I'm all for that. Let me point me the way. But the two links I also offered up were responsible research and business and management. There's been a huge transition, even in the last, say, 5 years, to expect faculty to not do research that doesn't have some kind of connection to making the world or making work a better place. And a lot of the times they'll use the UN sustainability goals. And so for me, UN Sustainability Goal 8 about better work is the one I will speak to the most, but many other people point towards, companies and research around climate change and the like. High Bar is less business only. It's a broader group, and both of those associations are entirely about how do we make research be more meaningful and valuable in the world. So things like we're seeing today with this group, the partnerships I talked about at the very beginning, we're moving in a good direction, I think. I think we're not moving away from that. We're moving towards the ideas that you're all talking about.
That's excellent. And
Yossi,
yeah,
this is Joe. We have a couple of participants right around this table, this session now, that is from the outside California, and also experience. Can we hear from them and see what they can offer us? How did they engage with industry, either in their region or further beyond?
yeah, that would be great. Please don't be shy if you want to share your thoughts.
Professor Kalen, Professor Kako, can we hear from you? I'm sorry, I'm calling you out.
Yeah, I see Alyssa, Jan, and then I see the abbreviation AC.
Oh yes, yes, that's in Birmingham.
Yeah. So please, if you'd like to share anything, just feel free to share. We would love to hear from you.
Well, in a brainstorming way, Joe, you and Yassi and everyone, if World University and School can begin to develop online universities in other countries, emerging out of ocw.mit.edu with its remarkable research and learning focus, how would collaborations with industry and internships work there? Is perhaps how I would respond. And then further, it seems like when one begins to engage with industry, this is from a Reed College alumnus perspective, learning about knowledge generation basic science can take a back seat. The liberal arts education privileges knowledge generation, and then afterward, students are on their own, sort of to find a career. MIT is a liberal arts education, but it also, I think maybe at the undergraduate level, I don't really know, maybe Jim Sporer can speak to this, has developed remarkable ties with industry, and for learning reasons, with an amazing STEM science undergraduate learning program. One of the questions I have in developing MIT Open Courseware-centric World University and School is how to even build out an ongoing learning focus as one explicitly engages industry and companies with intern programs. But other countries out of region from California are very interesting questions too. Thanks.
Speaking as an industry representative outside of California, we're in North Carolina. We don't. I listen to how collaborative you are, and I'm really envious to some extent, because we have great collaboration with our local universities, and we're trying to build out collaboration with other universities, but I don't see quite the organization at the state level to sponsor such partnerships. So there may be something that even could be done like at the local government, state government level, to learn from some of the states where there is that stronger partnership, and potentially help facilitate some of those relationships. And then to answer, just mention one comment that Scott mentioned. Even in the international space, there are opportunities to get sort of real world experience because there are open source projects. And I think I mentioned that earlier. Students can join open source projects and get sort of real world experience on problems that are relevant in many cases to what industry is trying to solve. So that's an opportunity even for students potentially even outside the country to collaborate with colleagues on projects that they could learn from all around the world, build relationships, and also get some real world experience that open source projects would love to have the help for.
That's a really good point, Nancy.
But Nancy, may I ask, with open source projects, it's really the onus is the student. But what I'm hearing today is that a student will be more successful if they are supported. As ma'am, you were the one who pointed it out, that there's somebody in the school who will help them just get started. But if you're not really organized, if a campus is not organized to support the student, and it's the onus on the student to, engage, then I would imagine that the success rate will be lower.
Right. Now, I will say the Linux Foundation has sponsors projects, and they are very well run. So there's a project lead for every project that the foundation sponsors. They have a code of ethics for engagement. And so there are projects that students could engage on, I would say, a little more safely than there are ones that would not be near as safe. And I do agree, the university, even if they don't have the means or the goals to necessarily engage industry on teaching, mentorships, internships, that sort of thing, they could make these resources known to students, and students could choose to take advantage of them if they just even knew about them potentially.
Yeah. And I also see an opportunity actually for a third party, like a professional association, to broker some of that. I love to hear your thoughts, Nancy, on that.
Very, very much so. And I know the Linux Foundation would love to do more of that with universities. They do have like a university open source project area, but they're like everybody, strapped for resources and people, but they, under their umbrella and with funding maybe from, say, the NSF, maybe there's an aspect there where, as an outreach of this group or some other grant type project, they could go create these materials that could be given to the universities that aren't able to participate as fully as maybe others are, and make sure that that knowledge is out there.
Yeah, that's exactly what I'm thinking about. And so a lot of food for thought. Okay, any other thoughts on these questions or anything else that's on top of your mind?
With regard to how do these leaders, the third question you ask in the breakout sessions questions, how do these leaders respond to the rapid rate of technological change to maintain their relevance and leadership? I'm wondering whether universities could be, in a way, drivers of these questions for companies, rather than companies responding to next technological innovation and trying to build something around it. Could universities take a more active role through a broker relationship, maybe with ISSIP, in a way to sort of define developing possibilities that companies might engage in? So I'm thinking ocw.mit.edu has so much STEM potential in its 2,400 courses in English and in its 300 languages. Even as those courses develop, I think there's the possibility to sort of inform and take into account what might benefit industry and bring students into internship programs. I'm wondering how academia could take a more active role in defining how industry develops in these regards. Any thoughts about that? Questions, ideas?
It's a great question. Any thoughts?
Always got thoughts. I don't know if you can hear me.
Yes.
Yeah, great discussion, by the way, everyone. And thanks, Scott, for this last question. And I put a few comments in the chat for some of the things that you were all saying that I just thought were fantastic. But I think, you know, at the end of the day, and Nancy, I would love to know if you see this as well. I think there's a principal agent problem. And I think, Scott, this gets to your question. The principal agent problem in economics, if you're familiar with it, is just the, you know, you got the person in industry who's got way too much work to do. Oh my God. Oh my God. I've got a colleague, literally a colleague who was a faculty, and he just went to work for an IT company, and he sent this note saying, I don't know how you people in industry can do this. It's like, it's nonstop, it's crazy, blah, 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 you know, and I just had to laugh because he's right. It is crazy the amount of work we have. And so there's not a, and it's not intellectual property either, because a lot of us, like Nancy and I, we work in open source. So, hey, you know, it's you know, it's the idea that the industry expert, you know, you need the academic people who are also helping the student in the picture, because, you know, you want to make sure they get course credit, or, you know, you want to make sure it's a meaningful experience. And I just think it comes down to the people in industry are too busy. They've got too much work, which is where I believe technology is going to come to the rescue a little bit. Because once we have, and I know this sounds very futuristic and it's probably 10 years away, and Scott, I always tell you your vision is like 10 years off. Once once we have digital twins of the industry expert, digital twin of the faculty, digital twin of the student, what the student knows, then I think that coordination problem and the principal agent problem is going to get a lot easier, because supervision is going to become much, much easier. The industry person is going to be able to carve off some work. The student is going to be able to get it done. There's going to be real value created on both sides. But right now, it's just the industry person is too busy. And the student needs more supervision than they're able to get from the industry person. And even though the faculty, there are great faculty who understand industry and understand their students and try to help, again, I think the academic is a little too busy. And as Lou said, the incentives aren't there. You know, if you tweak the incentives of the academics, then I think that would help. But the industry people also need, you know, I've seen industry people who are really good at carving out those projects. Nancy, I think you're probably one. You've got a lot of experience at it. I know I'm one. I've worked with lots and lots of students. It's hard. It's a skill. And then there are a lot of my industry colleagues who are just too busy and don't have that skill. They don't know how to work with students. They don't know how to work with faculty. So there is a knowledge gap. I think technology can help with that. But yeah, it's a great time to be solving these problems. So thanks everyone for the opportunity to put out a couple of thoughts.
I think Jim nailed it. Something that someone said earlier as well is that if I can come up with the ideas, and I'm very good at the collaboration, and I have a great team that supports me in that. But if I have to tell the student to pick technology A and put technology B, and when they get stuck to how to figure out, I'm done. I don't have the time for that. And when it works really well is the university is invested in making sure I don't have to do that. But I get great benefits. This question of how can we support all the work rather than add to it. I need to see value in that relationship. I get it from the program at NC State because they're doing basic research for me that I don't have time to do. So as long as I formulate the problem well and I set them on the path and I check in with them periodically and just keep the idea side of it going, somebody else is helping them do that implementation. Look, they'll ask me, but I don't have to spend hours and hours debugging and helping them get there. That to me is a huge win-win. So how you set those programs up, I think makes a lot of difference in how successful they will be.
And Nancy, one question. Are your programs paid programs? Do you pay for the services of the students?
No. And we always try to make sure the students can put whatever they do up on GitHub and they're building their resume and they're building their brand. This is purely research. The university will allow us to indicate if we think this information is proprietary and the student shouldn't publish it. But I try very hard not to go there for the students so that they have the opportunity, because there's an incentive for them too to be successful. So they'll be able to put this on their resume and put it up on GitHub and showcase the world what the good work they've done. So we all win in that. And I will agree, predecessors to me, colleagues to me in this program have not been as successful as I have been at this because they haven't either been able to quantify the problem in a space that students can get done in one semester, because we only have one semester for this project, although they can build. In fact, we're building on the next semester, something they've done this semester. So it takes a little bit of skill to be able to figure that out. It's not hard. It just takes a little time to get good at picking out projects that students can complete in a reasonable amount of time. And then you have to be able to give time to it. And that's kind of on the industry incentive. I've got to be able to get something back out of this because I don't have a lot of time. And so the university has figured out how much they're willing to invest in this program and how to keep their industry sponsors engaged in the sort of the correct level of engagement. So the industry sponsors feel like they're succeeding and the students in the school figure out that they're succeeding.
Yeah, I'd love to reach out to you to unpack the program more as we continue our research in this area.
Happy to do that. And I can bring in along the academic sponsors of the program. And so all three of us can sit at the table and you can hear the different perspectives.
That would be great. And Lou, I'd like to do the same with you at San Jose State. I mean, I'm familiar with some of the work that ISSIP has done with the business school. But on the engineering side, I'd love to get your help on understanding this better.
Of course. No problem.
Great. Any other thoughts? We still have 8 minutes. Okay, if there is no other thoughts, comments, I want to thank each and every one of you for staying until the end. I want to thank Nancy and the rest of the panelists and Gary for participating in the panel. And I want to thank each and every one of you for your participations and great ideas. And again, for staying until the very end. Our next workshop is next Wednesday, same time. It's on the evolution of credentialing, and Jim will be, Jim has put a great panel together and will be facilitating that panel. So I really encourage you to, if you're not already signed up, to sign up. It's going to be a great one. With that, thank you all so much and have a great rest of the day.
Thanks, everyone. Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.